Hello, I'm the developer of the horror engine. I've received questions about how to adjust the walking and running speed of the player character in certain situations during the game, and then reset it back to its original values. Before I get into that, let me explain how the usable objects and the horror event system work. After that, I'll show you how to use them to change the gameplay settings during the game. Let's begin with the usable objects. In the horror engine, all blueprints that the character can interact with should be child classes of the use blueprint. All the functions needed for interaction, including the function that checks the conditions for a horror event to start, are built into the use blueprint. Let's create a new blueprint and configure it as an object that the character can interact with. As you can see, when creating a blueprint in the Unreal Engine, it prompts you to select the parent class. Choosing the use blueprint ensures that it is created correctly. However, even if it wasn't initially created that way, you can still modify it later. Let me demonstrate what happens in this case, and then guide you through the process of changing it. Not surprisingly, we can't add the necessary functions like use or alternative use as events. This is because the parent class of the blueprint is not set to use. To fix this, click on Class Settings, and then, under the Details tab, change the parent class to use. Now let's add the necessary events to this blueprint. The use event is activated by a left click on the object, while the alternative use event is activated by a right click. Let's verify if everything is functioning correctly using the print string. Clicking the object with the left mouse button should display use on the screen, while clicking with the right mouse button should display alternative use. And of course, we need a mesh to click on. Let's see if we can interact with this wonderful object after we place it in the scene. As you can see, despite all our efforts, it remains unusable. The horror engine deserves only a 1-star rating. Or perhaps we overlooked something crucial. As highlighted in the initial video of the series, the object types for the meshes that the character can interact with must be set to usable. After making the necessary changes, the object becomes usable as intended. Finally, we've crafted this incredible object that triggers use on a left click and alternative use on a right click. Deserves a solid 4-star rating, don't you think? Let's improve its functionality by configuring it to trigger the use event of another object when it is utilized. To achieve this, create a new variable and set its type as a reference to the use object. This way, it can serve as a reference to any object whose parent class is use. Drag it onto the event graph and link it to a use function. This will ensure that when this object is utilized, the selected object will also be used. Ensure that the variable is set as instance editable. After compiling, the blueprint is ready for use. Now we can select the object we want to interact with using this blueprint. For example, I want the selected door to open and close when I click on this object. As you can observe, clicking on the object triggers the door to open. Clicking on it again results in the door closing. This is because the use event of the door is configured to trigger the open event when the door is closed and the close event when the door is open. As a final example, let's extend the functionality to allow the selection of multiple objects. To do this, we need to change the type of the variable to array. This time, we'll link it to the use function using the forEachLoop utility. Now we can select multiple objects for it. With this enhancement, it certainly deserves a 5-star rating. With that basic experience out of the way, let's take a look at the radio. As you can see, the radio has a Create New Horror Event option. This feature, which is also available in all other usable objects, can be used to trigger certain events under specific conditions. When you click on the Add Element button, you will see many options below the created index. The trigger interaction determines the condition under which the designed horror event will be triggered. As long as this option is set to nothing, no event will be triggered. Here you will find numerous condition options, and you may be confused about which ones are compatible with the radio. To find out, let's take a look at the radio blueprint. When the use event occurs, it is followed by the open on event if the radio is off, and the close off event if it is on. If you examine these events, you will see that there is a horror event check function here. This is the function that detects the current state of the object and triggers the horror event if it matches the selected trigger interaction. As you can see, this function detects whether the radio is turned on or off. If you search for this function in the blueprint, you can see what else it detects. The search results show that there is another function called Horror Event Check with the Switch Channel option selected. If we look at the starting point, the alternative use event follows the Switch Channel event. At the end of the Switch Channel event, the Horror Event Check function detects that the channel has been switched, and if it matches the trigger interaction, the horror event is triggered. Based on the data we collected, we can say that the radio is compatible with the open, on, close, off, and switch channel trigger interaction options. In addition, the Begin Play option is compatible with all objects and triggers the horror event as soon as the level loads. Let's set this to Open On. This will trigger the horror event to be designed when the radio is turned on. The after n times value determines how many times the trigger interaction must occur for the horror event to be triggered. For example, if this value is set to 3, the radio must be turned on 3 times for the horror event to be triggered. If the do once value is unchecked, the same horror event will be triggered each time the required conditions are met. It is checked by default to prevent this. The autosave option allows you to save the game just before the horror event is triggered. If the save game title is left blank, the level name will be used as the title. We can finally start designing a horror event. All events that can be realized are categorized here. The environment category makes it possible to manipulate all objects in the scene. The actor interactions array allows you to command specified usable objects to trigger their specified event. The commands are specified in indexes added to this array, and an unlimited number of indexes containing different commands can be added. Actors to interact is the array into which you add the usable objects that will be affected by the event. Let's add the old TV from the scene to this array. Interaction is the list where you can specify what event will happen to the selected objects. If you notice, the options you see here are the events used in the blueprints whose parent class is use. The event selected here will be executed on the selected usable objects. The repeat n times value determines how many times this event will be repeated. The delay before interaction value determines how many seconds should pass before the event occurs. Let's set it to 1 second. To briefly summarize the horror event we have designed, when the player turns on the radio, the horror event is triggered, and after 1 second, the use command is given to the old TV. Now let's change the repeat n times value so that this event repeats 10 times. Note that each event has a processing time. Attempting to repeat the event before this time has elapsed will not work properly. To avoid this, let's set the delay before each repeat value to something like 0.3 seconds. Here we go. Everything works as expected. Let's add another usable object to actors to interaction. Now everything that applies to the old TV also applies to the VHS player. This is because we added them to the same index. If we want them to behave independently, we need to add one of them to a different index. Let's duplicate the index we already created and make changes to it. If we add the VHS player to this index and change the delay before interaction value to 1.2 seconds, they will now move asynchronously. I will cover other features in the environment category in future videos. Let's try to do something in the player category. For example, we can make our character get scared when these paranormal events happen. When we add a new index to the fear effect, we are presented with several options. Here you can turn off the animation or sound, select a custom sound, and set the number of seconds after which the character will be scared. Let's set the delay before fear to 2 seconds and see what happens. I think I would have had the same reaction, and maybe I wouldn't have been able to take my eyes off the TV. We can use Look at Actors for the character to do the same thing. When we add a new index, we are presented with the option to create a sequence that makes the character to look at the specified actors for a specified amount of time. The delay before looking sequence value determines how long it will take for this sequence to start. First, let's set this value to something like 2.25 seconds. Then let's add a new index to the sequence, select the old TV as the actor to look and see what happens. The turn speed value determines how fast the character will turn to the specified point. If you leave it at 0, the character will turn as fast as possible. I think 0.5 seconds would be ideal. Now let's add a new index to actor interactions, and this time let's switch the radio to a different channel. To do this, select the radio, and this time choose the alternative use command. As you may remember, during our analysis of the radio blueprint, we observed that the alternative use event is used to change the channel. Let's set the delay before interaction value to 5 seconds and see what happens. Now, let's add a new sequence to Look at Actors and have the character look back at the radio at the right moment. By the way, the keep looking duration value causes the character to remain frozen while looking at the specified point, and the character cannot be moved until that time has elapsed. For example, I want the character to look anxiously at the old TV, freeze for 2 seconds, and then repeat the same action for the radio. Now, let's navigate to the Sounds category and select a sound from the library to play 2 seconds after the event start. I think 1 second will be better. If we talk about the Quest category, this is where you can update the character's diary. For example, I want the text in the diary to be updated with "What's going on?" 3 seconds after the events start. As you can see, a notification appears indicating that the diary has been updated. If we open the inventory with the tab key, we can see that the text has been updated. Now let's add an event that will put an end to all this. Add one last index to the actor interactions, then add the old TV, VHS player, and radio to it. This time, select the close off as the interaction and set the delay before interaction value to 8 seconds. Let's also make a glitch effect appear on the screen at the same time. As a final touch, let's add a subtitle text to the screen. The sequence system here ensures that the added subtitles appear on the screen in order. Select the desired audio file from the library
What the hell?
and enter the subtitle text. It is not necessary to add an audio file. The Sound is 3D option enables the voice to emanate from a specific point. Since the character is the one who is currently speaking, I leave this option unchecked. The Modify duration value, allows you to increase or decrease the duration of the text on the screen in seconds. By default, the text stays on the screen for the duration of the selected audio file. If no audio file is used, the duration is set by this value. The delay before start sequence value, as the name suggests, determines how many seconds will elapse before the sequence starts. Let's try 2.5 seconds. I think it would be better to set it to 5 seconds. Alright, so that is basically how you can use the horror event system. I'll guide you through setting up much more complex scenarios in future videos. Until then, I suggest you get some practice by experimenting with what you have learned in this video and exploring the pre-built horror events in the overview and demo levels. If you're new to the horror engine and haven't played it yet, you can also experience the horror engine tech demo for free on Steam to get an idea. Now that we know as much as we need for now, let's consider how to manipulate the gameplay settings with the horror event system. The gameplay settings structure is defined as a pure function in the horror engine functions library, which is accessible to all blueprints. Similarly, its subcategories are defined here for quick access, but they are still essentially derived from the gameplay settings. Let's take a look at the horror engine blueprint to see how this structure is accessed and where it is used. As you can see, when we search for the player settings, it appears under the horror engine functions. When its structure is split, all its elements are accessed. But we have a little problem. Since these variables are read from a blueprint function library, they cannot be edited by blueprints. Upon checking the references, it becomes apparent that these variables are used in countless places, and since they cannot be edited, we have no means to change them during the game. So, what can we do in this case? Replacing each of these variables with editable ones, one by one, would become a nightmare, causing us to experience a horror event in real life. Since we love these events in the horror engine, preferably not in real life, we can sidestep this nightmare by using this system wisely. After thinking about it for a while, I found a solution. We can allow the functions library to read an editable gameplay settings structure from the horror engine character blueprint when needed. This way, we can make it switch to a custom gameplay settings at any time during the game with the horror events system. To do this, we need a small modification and a usable blueprint where we can edit the custom settings in the scene. I've prepared this blueprint for you, and you can download it from the link in the description below. Once downloaded, navigate to the Usable Assets folder. Right-click on the Portals and Triggers folder and select the Show in Explorer option. Copy and paste the downloaded file into this folder. When you return to Unreal Engine, you will find the Gameplay Settings modifier in the Portals and Triggers folder. When you open the blueprint, you will encounter a compile error. The reason for this error is that the two variables in the horror engine character blueprint are not yet defined. To quickly resolve this, drag the Settings Modified and Modified Gameplay Settings variables to the event graph, select both, and copy them with Ctrl-C. Next, navigate to the Core folder, open the horror engine character, and paste them here with Ctrl-V. Right-click on each and select the Create Variable option for both. Ensure they appear in the Variables category and press the Compile button. Then, return to the Gameplay Settings modifier. Press the Compile button, and the error message should disappear. Let's explore the functionality of this blueprint. When the Open On event is triggered, following the disabling of other modifiers in the scene, it proceeds to the Modify Settings event. Conversely, when the Close Off event is triggered, it undoes the changes made. The Modify Settings event updates the horror engine character's variables with modified gameplay settings on the Open On event and reverts to default settings on the Close Off event. As a final step, we also need to edit the Gameplay Settings function in the Horror Engine Functions library. Add a Get Player Character node and link the return value to a Cast to Horror Engine Character node. We won't need this one, by the way. Get the Settings Modified and Modified Gameplay Settings variables from the Horror Engine character node. Use a Select node. Connect the Boolean to its index pin, the structure to its true pin, and make a default gameplay settings for its false pin. As a result of this update, the settings will be read from the Horror Engine character if modified during the game, or from the default if not. Now, we can add the gameplay settings modifier to the scene and start using it. This is where we specify the settings that we want to transition during the game. The content of the modified gameplay settings is exactly the same as the gameplay settings we discussed in the previous video. The Prevent Add, Remove, and Equipment option prevents equipment from being added or removed by modified settings during the game. The modifying speed value determines the transition speed in seconds. So, how do we toggle between these settings? We can achieve this by turning it on or off through the Horror Event system, similar to any other usable object. This time, let's use the Overlap trigger. The process will be almost the same as what we did with the radio. The Overlap trigger is only compatible with the Overlap with Trigger option. Add the Gameplay Settings modifier from the scene to the Actors to Interact array, and select the Open On event as the interaction. Summing up this designed horror event, when the character overlaps with the trigger area, the event triggers. Therewith, the Open On event activates the Gameplay Settings modifier. Let's modify the standing height, walking speed, and field of view values and see what happens. By the way, the overlap duration value in the overlap trigger determines the number of seconds the character must wait in the area to trigger the horror event. Here we go. All we need to do to revert these changes is give the Close Off command with a horror event. Let's duplicate the overlap trigger and change the interaction option to Close Off. When the character overlaps with the second trigger, the settings will be restored. Now let's modify the footstep sound interval value to 80 and change the color of the glow stick. As a final example, let's change the color of the flashlight and make it flicker continuously. In this video of the Horror Engine tutorial series, I've tried to guide you through the basic logic of the horror event system and the usable parent class, and demonstrate how they can be used to manipulate the player character during the game. It took me about 10 days of hard work to bring you this new feature and the video as a New Year's gift, and I hope you find it useful and enjoyable. Wishing you a great year ahead, and see you in the next video.